I think we are live.
Oh, yeah, I
Welcome,
believe so too.
welcome to the very first M&A Profits Lessons from the Trenches live edition with the crash test bunny of Evan Duke, DMA. Evan is a fractional leadership specialist and exit engineer. His journey is rather unique and he bridges the world of music, non-profit, and business sector. He began his career while pursuing a doctoral degree in trumpet performance. And yes, we are here to blow his own horn, but I'm sure he's heard that 1,000 times already. During which he immersed himself in business operations by implementing CRM, accounting, software, and process automations. Well, 2 decades in, here he is, and we are using the tech to the best of our abilities. So, welcome, Evan. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Well, we're caught up because you are active out on LinkedIn and you have been reading and liking and commenting on the material that I've been putting out there. So I contacted you and said, hey, let's just catch up, find out who each other are and get to know each other. And somewhere in that conversation, it came up that we're going to do a live presentation. This is it. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your support. Much appreciated. So tell me a bit about you, Evan.
Well, as you said, I started out my career a little differently than probably most in my field. I actually wanted to, be a college professor as well as, be a professional musician and economics based essentially because of the Great Recession kind of changed that plan. But really, what I began to realize as I began to shift my career is even though I obviously love music, I also really just enjoyed, making things work from an operational standpoint. And that's really kind of, where I got into this and just the fascination with how everything fit together. And I guess you could say kind of what was the final leg of this journey and me coming to become an exit engineer was just seeing the need out there as the baby boomer generation is getting ready to exit, and what we are referring to as the silver tsunami is about to hit, and just seeing the real need here. And this isn't just the need that this one generation is going to have. I mean, exit planning is something that is a reality that unless you've bought a business and the business is completely owner independent, the reality is everybody who's going to be starting a business and grow at any proportion and any size is going to have to struggle with this. So this is always going to be a need.
You say silver tsunami. It's a catastrophe that's looming. It really is. The reason for that is, when do you start to plan your exit? You start all the time from day one, because you need to start your exit planning for what happens in a disaster, divorce, all of these things. You need to have plans for that. You need to have plans for when you're actually going to voluntarily leave the business, when you want to retire, when you want to cash in. There's lots of different exit plans that you need. And right now, this silver tsunami, as you speak of, they don't have a plan. And let me quote your numbers directly at you. 70% of businesses don't sell.
Yeah, exactly. And I think really you couple that with really the other statistics that we're seeing as well. Of those 30% that sell, 12 months later, about 75% of those business owners, they begin to regret the decision that they made. Now, that regret, it's complex. I think a chunk of it is some of them realize, okay, they lost a substantial amount of value that, they could have recouped. But there's also a chunk of them that, they'd been preparing for retirement and then they got there and then they didn't realize, hey, wait, what am I going to do? And I think of a friend of mine who was a CFO of a bank in Massachusetts, and he announced that he was going to be retiring last September. And a couple of weeks ago, I saw that he'd been hired as a CFO for another bank. So I think, I think in his case, that's also another aspect of like, well, you got to retirement, but you've been going for so many decades nonstop, and all of a sudden it stops, and you're like, what do I do now?
And part of being an exit engineer, as you term it, is also selling the dream, making the dream possible, their dream as to what they're going to be doing in the future, what they're going to be able to achieve in the future. Selling the next day when that phone stops ringing, because they're so accustomed to the phone ringing and ringing and ringing. And then the next day after they exit, the phone stops.
Yeah.
Seller's remorse, I think, is the terminology there. So we need to be coaching them as we move forward on what their future dreams are, what they want to achieve, and how they want to achieve those. And that is a serious thing. I spoke with a lady in New Zealand a couple of hours ago now, and she did a rather large 8-figure exit. And she basically went into depression for the next couple of years because she'd spent so long doing it. And now she's back and absolutely dominating on the coaching side of building female entrepreneurs in New Zealand. She's just giving back. That's her goal. So they need to have that next step sorted out.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's what's awesome is you were describing about that, story about that 8-figure exit, and she was depressed for a couple years. I actually remember after I had finished my doctoral degree, which just that entire process, not only the classes that you were needed to take, but then you had the qualifying exams, and then the dissertation is just. And after it was like I think a decade or so of college classes, I just remember that like literally after I finished it the next month, after I had walked and gotten my diploma, I was just thinking, what do I do with my life now? It's like, now obviously it's kind of funny in hindsight, but it's just such a massive undertaking, and there's just so much. And I think what a lot of the times happens is there's just so much emotional energy invested, and there's this push that there's a bit of burnout combined with the fact that, okay, we've been going on an adrenaline for so long that now it's like, okay, our emotions are a mess. So it's just a very complex process that I think I feel like we're really beginning to understand a lot of what needs to be done. Now, I'm not going to say we're really good at addressing it by any means, but I think we're beginning to understand just how complex this process is.
We cannot address it. It has to be the person watching this that has to address it. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is ask the questions, but the person has to look inside themselves and understand the loss and understand the next steps. But all we can do is hold that, ask those questions in advance, hold it out in front of them so that they've got something to achieve, another thing to achieve. Rather than having a loss, they have another achievement. And that fits with their A mind. They're an A performer, not a B or a C performer. So it fits with their mind. Okay, let me ask you another question. What are some of the critical processes and policy development lessons you've learned that could help acquirers improve post-merger integration? And the reason this is so important is 87% of M&As fail to achieve their goals post-acquisition because of the poor integration skills. So how does this affect you? And how do you deal with it?
Well, it's actually funny. I'm actually going to speak from experience here because I was actually working with an organization. Now, in all fairness, I was actually not involved with making the decision to essentially do it. Technically wasn't a merger, but on many levels it really was. Um, and really, the lessons from that experience, um, really, I think the big thing is just looking at it, kind of taking a step back and just making sure that you have complete alignment. Because in this particular organization, with the merger that we had, a lot of stuff looked good on paper, but the reality was, if you step back, the resources that were needed, plus the management, um, there really needed to have been right at the beginning some uh, a better approach to integrating the management. Just because one is the uh, organization that became a part of ours. Really, what happened, if I remember correctly, they had their own management team that basically had their own culture, and they really didn't want to adjust to what we were doing. And what was more important, in addition to that, one of the other big issues um, was it actually began to drain the resources of the parent company. So I think really at the end of the day, um, what will help the most is, you know, unless it is excellent alignment, don't do it. And when I say excellent, I mean it could be good, it could look like it's heading there, but I mean, unless it is clear that this is going to work very well, don't do it, and really don't even try to make it work. Just because I know in the end with this particular situation is, we kept trying and trying, and it just didn't work, and finally it actually got shut down, and the parent company actually declined substantially. So really, from my experience, is like, don't hesitate to do very thorough due diligence, but at the same time is like, you're looking for something that is not only going to complement, but you can integrate right away.
I have seen that a couple of times over the years, and I'm talking 8 and 9 figure ones here, high 8s and 9s here. And the issue is that the businesses, the acquirer, doesn't have their systems and processes laid out correctly.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ready for the acquisition. It's got nothing to do with the acquisition. That works. It's got nothing to do with the one that's being acquired. That works too. It is the parent company that doesn't have their processes in place, their systems in place to onboard, to have the mentors in place, to bring the management team on board and sell them the new possibilities, sell them the dream as well. We don't want to lose those people when we do the acquisitions. We want to keep them because look what they've done already. They've built something that we want to acquire. So it must be good. Otherwise, we wouldn't go near it. So they have achieved already. We need to be selling them the dream and working with them, coaching them to come along. But I've worked in an organization where we had to put in time machines for people to clock in and clock out of. And we literally had to shut the service desk down for 2 days to build those time machines, shutting service to 83 sites around the country. That is because when you do an acquisition and an integration like this, you need a project team. Oh, yes, we've got great staff. We'll bring them on board. These people, you don't have these people sitting around doing nothing. They've got real jobs to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be employed. You need professional project staff that have done the M&As and integration previously.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to cause you grief.
And, really, to kind of dovetail as far as like where I am with, the exit, I mean, obviously, and then I bring this in as a follow-up, is when a business owner wants to exit, the reality of why what you're saying is so important about having a professional team in place is most of these people who are exiting, this is going to be the only time they do this.
Yes.
I did a recent study, and it actually just blew me away. Two numbers. Now, obviously, this is from here in the US, but I would not be surprised if basically throughout the world this is the case in some shape or form. But in the United States, there's private equity has about $2.6 trillion ready to invest in businesses. And in addition to that, every offer that they're making is after they've reviewed a total of 80 transactions. So just think about that. With all of that money they have on hand, that dry powder to invest, they're looking at 80 offers before offering one. So that just goes to show you there is just so much data out there. There's so many resources. There's so much information that if you're going to be only doing this once in your life, the odds are not in your favor. they're about as weighted against you as you could get.
Okay. I've been doing M&As for 25 years. Been doing roll-ups these days. Now, generally what happens with me is the document's signed, I take over, okay, make it happen. There is a big difference between what I do and packaging a company and selling it off to a private equity. I'm terrific at the integration side of things, absolutely brilliant at that. That's what I do. But the issue is that negotiation with the private equity and that selling side of things, that's a whole different skill. You need a team around you to do that. If I went off and tried to sell this business, this six-figure business or nine-figure business, sorry, off to a private equity, I would lose a zero. Simple. And that's why one of the first things that I did was get myself a private equity person where they don't get out of bed for $1 million themselves. If there isn't $1 million in their back pocket for them to get out of bed, they won't do it. So I've got myself a brilliant guy. I'm just keeping him on the burner, building the relationship. And when I'm ready, sure, he's going to take a good percentage. What do I care? He can take a single-digit percentage of it, or I can lose a zero, which is a double-digit percentage. Simple. Happy to give him the money, negotiate the deal, make it all happen.
Yeah.
You've got to have the right team around you, and that's why you term yourself as an exit engineer. You need to be an engineer, you need an architect, you need a salesperson, you need a whole team around you. And you need to be aware enough to know what your capabilities are and where you can fit in. I know what I'm good at. I'm good at making things happen. That's my skill set.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I mean, really, I think it's just that the importance of just staying in your lane and doing what you can do. And it's, and that's why I know with a lot of the work I work on, I'm like, hey, I work great inside the business, but when it comes to, the plans for the business owner, like post exit, okay, you need to have a financial advisor planning, not only what are some good tax strategies as well as, just helping you out. And there are things that I do with the business owner trying to help them out towards, that exit. But there are other aspects of like, okay, what are you going to do for fulfillment? I mean, you've spent all these years, 50, 60 hours a week building this business that, sells for, let's say, 150 million. I mean, that's incredible, but what are you going to do once you exit? And you've done something incredible that very few people have done. Now, where is your significance going to be after that happens?
That's right. Okay, let me ask you this one then. How does technology assessment and improvement factor into evaluating the business before acquisition? And then the second part of that is obviously going to be, and it has to be these days, is where does AI fit into the assessment and then the execution post merger? There's a
That
big
is a
fishing line to throw out for you.
that is an awesome question, and I will actually start out like when it comes to tech stack. That is one thing that I never cease to be amazed. Like I have seen businesses that they're these cash cash cows that are just chugging out the profits, and when it comes to bids and proposals, everything is still being done on legal pad. And for those in our audience listening who don't know what a legal pad is, well, I mean, it's for me. It cracks me up. I mean, I'm like, really, but I know there are a lot of young people out there who probably, I mean, they don't really know what a legal pad is just because where we are in the digital age. But and then and then a little bit more serious example of just how serious this can be. QuickBooks Desktop was recently discontinued. I believe it was in September of 2024. It's no longer being supported.
No.
Now, in the revenue range of 5 to 50 million per year, it's estimated that there are between 10 to 20,000 businesses in the United States that still use QuickBooks Desktop. Now, aside from me being impressed that a business at that scope is actually using QuickBooks Desktop for their accounting, that just boggles me because while of all the QuickBooks Desktop QuickBooks versions, I love QuickBooks Online, and I think Advanced is the most powerful version of it. I mean, that's not designed really for businesses even in the 5 million range. That's where you're looking at something like maybe say a NetSuite. But
they're missing out on all the dashboards, dashboards. They're missing out on all the AI integration for
exactly.
They're using that sort of technology these days.
Yeah. And and this is kind of where the AI, when it comes to AI is, and I feel like the reality is when it comes to AI is there is some tremendous power to go through a lot of information very fast. But you got to be careful just because of the fact, and this is where I'm glad that my wife is a web developer, and we actually share the same office, and we'll be working at home, and I'll just mention something to her. And one question I've had is like, okay, when it comes to security, and I'll give you an example. SIMs, which are just important are just one of the most important documents, I think, when it comes to the M&A world, just because of the fact that it's basically the opportunity for you to get everything out, all the specs out on the business, every piece of information out there. I was looking at it, and even though I've trained my LLM to be able to go through all the information and produce a SIM, what I've discovered in talking with my wife is like, it's not that secure. I mean, if you put it in, unless you have it so that way, it's basically not connected, to the internet, it's just not going to be secure. So all that to say is AI and really businesses that are able to leverage AI in ways that, just help them focus more on the deep thinking as opposed to the grunt work. Those are going to be businesses that are going to command a premium. But Absolutely. On the flip side, and the reason why I hit the SIM and use that example, and I'm sure anybody listening in the M&A world are saying, you're doing what with an LLM? You're using it well, that's the point, is like, if you're doing things that are not secure, with your tech, that's opening up a very serious security backdoor that could bite you. So really, And again, with AI, and even then, I'm going to throw this out there. I've actually talked with some CFO service providing firms where, I mean, their people don't use AI just because when it comes to the accounting work, just because of the fact that their clients have concerns over the security risks. So it's
There are
it's a tough
security issues, no
question.
doubt.
Yeah,
But with any risk, there is management strategies that you can put in place and should put in place. And then you can accept those risks or you can decline those risks. AI isn't any different there. What is different is the people's knowledge and fear of the technology. And the fear comes from the lack of knowledge.
Precisely.
Okay, so there was something else that I did really want to ask you about. And that is, you've got extensive non-profit as well as for-profit experience here. How does that work with M&As? Because there's plenty of non-profits out there that do acquisitions, that do mergers with other non-profits as well. How does that work, and what experience have you got in that arena?
Well, even though I've never actually really, done a non-profit merger, I will say what has really helped, and really just with the non-profit and for-profit, is just really understanding deeply intricacies that could be really, really helpful. And I'll give you an example. Is the nonprofit that I served as president of a while back was considering getting its own facility. And this facility would basically be almost like a performing arts center that, it would host its own events and have its activities. But what we settle on for a structure is making it a nonprofit subsidiary, a completely independent subsidiary. So that way, if it were to have problems, we would protect the orchestra and so on. And really the policy that I've had is just realizing, when it comes to that is just a very helpful lesson in risk mitigation. Like, okay, with this facility and just with all the challenges with that building project, that things kind of fell apart at the end, unfortunately. But really during that entire process, it was really eye-opening about things that some business owners may not realize. And I use that building example to kind of pivot to this illustration. Let's say you're a business owner and you own the building that you're in. Is that building a subsidiary? Or how are you handling? Because that's like structuring that. I mean, it's a type of thing that if you structured so that building is actually its own independent subsidiary.
Has to be.
Yeah. And I mean, even though I know what you're saying, the reality is there are a lot of, and when I've discussed this with my M&A colleagues, this is something that a lot of business owners are not thinking about. So that's just an example.
It's a terrific example. It really is. And I think that's a whole new discussion. Evan, this is our first live session. We're coming up to 29 minutes now. For the benefit of our guests, I think we should probably start to round this off at the 30-minute mark. I just want to say thank you for your time here today. And what is the best way to contact you?
Probably by email. The best email address is info at my name, evanduke.com. So it'll be info at evanduke.com. I mean, of course, I'm also on LinkedIn. So you want to do a LinkedIn message. I mean, it doesn't, my philosophy has always been, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I love to talk. And for the longest time, my rule had been, I will do a business meeting at any time but say 3 in the morning. But now these days, since we have a little one who loves to wake me up at that time, I'll probably be up at 3 in the morning, but for different reasons than a business call.
Well, thank you so much, Evan, for coming along and being the instigator of this first session. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Craig.